We've come to the highlight of the session today, where we're going to invite some heavy hitters of the industry to come and talk about controversial stuff generally with regards to digital, right? So without further ado, I want to invite Ricky back up on the stage. Hey. And I'll pass the floor to Ricky to take us on.
So how's it going? Okay, mic is working really well this time, so that's good. How's it going? Yeah? Feeling good? Inspired? Interesting? Yeah? Hanging in there? Excited to get to the booze? Yeah? So, so what we're going to do is we're going to have the panel conversation, and, we're not going to limit it just to the panel. We're going to obviously ask questions from you. But let me just sort of give you a little bit of an intro to what this is about, and then I'll invite the panel up here, and we'll have a little bit of fun with the panel, and we'll have a little bit of fun with the topic. So the topic is, data sucks within the modern advertising world. So, effectively, we've talked a lot about this thing called convergence. We've talked about video, we've talked about TV, we've talked about online. We've sort of gone into this sort of inspirational mode. So, things are changing pretty dramatically. So, I do a lot of traveling. I'm not too sure whether I do more than Dean or just about as much as Dean. But I do a lot of traveling, and I was in LA recently. And we'd gone and we'd been invited into one of the big brand advertisers in LA to talk about convergence. And they wanted to they wanted to learn a little bit, and we wanted to learn a little bit. So we sort of exchanged a few ideas, and we went in there on the sort of like basis that. We wanted to learn a little bit about how they make decisions between potentially in this new world, how they're going to make decisions around TV, how they're going to make decisions on online and video. And so we wanted to sort of check out with them a few thoughts that we had around this matter. We wanted to talk about, how can you have a single cross-platform tool that does verification across TV, online, and display. We had a whole number of things. We wanted to know how they did their planning, how they did their buying, how they were basically optimizing, how they were measuring, literally in this sort of converged world. And so, we talked a lot about it, and we put a lot of ideas into their heads. And they came back to us, and there was a lot of nodding. People get very excited about this converged world. And people get, when DG steps up and we start to talk about data in it, we get a lot of nodding around that. And the conversation had gone really, really well. And like every good meeting that you have with an ad agency or an advertiser, it always ends up in the bar in the evening, okay? And so you go to the bar, and you have this conversation, and I'm stood there talking to their head of digital, and he said, look, you realize that data really sucks. And I'm like, what do you mean data really sucks? And so we have this conversation about data sucks. So I go back to the office, and we start to talk about it. And so really that sort of triggered us into this conversation that does data really suck? So we thought what we'd do is we'd bring it to Singapore, we'd have this conversation live, we would do it with this audience, and we'd get your opinion. Does data really suck? Does data have a long way to go? And obviously we've brought a panel here to help us with this particular conversation. So what I really want to do is at this point in time, I'd like to invite, Phil, Kevin, Lars, Joe, and Agnes up on stage. Come and join me. Yeah? So a round of applause for our guest here. So the way we're going to work this, we've got a couple of microphones, so if you don't mind just sort of hanging them down. So the way we're going to work this, I'm going to ask each of you just to introduce yourselves, and then we'll go into a sort of like quick fire round, and then we'll take this topic, data sucks, and we'll play with it, we'll discuss it, and we'll get your opinion on does it really suck or doesn't it. So maybe, Kevin, we can start with you. If you could just quickly introduce yourself and your company and a little bit about what you do.
I'm Kevin Walsh. I'm the Managing Director of iProspect in Asia Pacific. I've been in Singapore for the last 15 months or so. Before that, I was in Australia for 15 years. I am Irish, so I think I'm global. Prospect is the search and performance marketing arm of Aegis Media. So our sister agencies are Accor, Isobar, Visium, etc.
Yes.
My name is Agnes. I work for the Accor Hotels. We are, well, the largest hotel chain operator in Asia-Pac. And we are a client of MediaMind, I would say. And in hospitality for more than 10 years. I'll come back to the challenge of data later on.
Phil?
Phil Cowlishaw, Performance Media Director, Ikon Communications, a media agency based in Sydney. I look after our technology and platforms offering.
Lars?
I'm Lars. I work for MediaCom here in Singapore. I work on PAT throughout the region. And yeah, short introduction.
Joe Nguyen, I'm with comScore. I run comScore Asia Pacific. Before this, I was at Omniture. Before that, I was with a hotel group where I know Agnes pretty well. Being the only data company up here, I'm here to prove that I don't suck.
Okay then, Joe. So it doesn't suck. So let's do the quick fire round. We'll start at that end and we'll work our way back down. So here you go. Quick fire round. Okay. Who do you trust more with your data? Your credit card company or Facebook?
Credit card.
Credit card? Lars, next
Credit
question.
card.
What?
Sorry.
No, you don't get to answer the same question. Yeah. You can give us your credit card number and we'll see how we do with that. But let's keep going. So what would be the bigger nuclear meltdown for online privacy? A massive data breach of Facebook data? Healthcare insurer?
Facebook, probably.
Okay, Facebook. Phil. Here's one for you. We've got a bit of a credit card theme going here, so we'll stick with the credit card. I feel my credit card data is safer with a waiter in a restaurant than an e-commerce company.
You want me to say correct or incorrect?
Which one would you go with?
E-commerce company.
E-commerce company. Okay, interesting. Okay, let's find a good one. Wow, it's Donna Wright's birthday. Agnes, one for you. I'm trying to pick a good one here.
Should be.
That's probably not an appropriate one. So let's do this one because this is probably good for you. What is more valuable to you in your world, an online GRP or a TV GRP?
Can I have?
You can have whatever you want.
Actually, both will be equally
Both,
valuable to
okay.
me. Yeah.
All right, so you would like both together?
Well, when you layer that together with our own customer database as what we are trying to do in our CRM strategy, it becomes even more valuable.
Okay. So, Kevin, hard one for you then. What would freak you out more, receiving a mail order subscription to a porno magazine or an online ad offering a subscription to a porno site?
And there's so many levels to this question.
Yeah. I saved that for you.
I guess my first question back is another one. Thank you. Mail order would probably freak me out more.
Mail order. Hey, I love this moderation thing. You can really sort of push this. This is good. So let's get to the subject. Data sucks. So let's maybe we should start with. Well, you got the microphone, Kevin. So let's start with you.
I knew that was going to be.
So basically, in a converged video world, does data really suck?
Oh, we had a bet in our little group earlier on today just how many times the word convergence and converged would actually be used. So I think I'd rather just start talking about that for a second because convergence, and I think I appreciate this a little bit more now that I live in Asia Pacific rather than when I lived in Sydney. Convergence in Indonesia means something totally different to what convergence means in Australia or in China or in Japan. I think we seem to be forgetting that a little bit. And everything that we are trying to do is trying to put it in the sense of our consumers. It's very easy when you talk about convergence to talk about technology advances, to talk about media platforms blurring, when really, 90% of people in Indonesia can be reached by a TV campaign still. And that's a bit of a scary thought. And I'm as digital as they get, trust me. But in certain markets throughout Asia Pacific, it's still very much traditional media world with maybe one extra screen put in there. So I wouldn't mind challenging the whole area of convergence for a start, because you guys' experience in the US and in the UK versus how we experience it in this part of the world is completely different. But we seem to be thinking and talking about it in very much one-size-fits-all types of vernacular. So I think there's an issue there. In terms of online video, everybody's talking about it. I think the danger with online video is that because that screen in that media format looks like your TV screen, we're going to put our TV ads there. And that is really underplaying the value of the content opportunity that online video is. So I think there's a lot to be discussed in terms of convergence. Yes, it is happening, but we have to recognize it's happening at different speeds. I didn't answer the question at all there.
You didn't really, but I know Joe has a real strong opinion around data, so let's go to Joe. And does it suck?
Well, on that, it's not convergence, it's divergent. Everything's going different ways, different platforms. It is not convergence. It's all in digital, yeah, sure, but that's about the only thing that's in common. It's converging around the fact that it's digital, but platform-wise, it's just everywhere, and different markets are doing different things and moving at different pace. Does data suck? No, users suck. Users of data suck. They don't know how to use it. There's tons of data. There's more out there than ever, and you got to find the right ones that meet your needs. But if you just wait for the data to tell you what you need, that's where most people are coming from that way. They're not saying, forget the data. This is what I need. Which data tells me what I need to know? But they're usually saying, oh, here's a new tool, and there's data that comes out of it. How do I use that? That's the wrong way to approach data.
Can I go next?
Yeah, sure.
I'm just jumping on that, okay? Data is fascinating. What sucks is that can't pull everything together to form coherent picture. I'm using at least 5 different platforms to pull data about my campaign, about my communication, and sometimes they contradict each other, you know. And what only makes sense is our own CRM data, because when it comes down to actual bookings and bodies in beds, that's the only thing that we rely on. So, openly. And this is something that we share with our agency. They may be saying that we see a lot of versions coming in that you only get like a certain percentage of it going back to related to the messages. What matters to me is not looking at which channel is converting. What matters to me is what is the overall impact on my bookings and my revenue for that set period of time. And this is something that we have to educate our hotel owners and my own team as well. So I don't find data sucks as much as it's good. It really helps you to make an informed decision. What sucks is that we're not able to pull everything together to give us a better idea of what is actually working and what is not.
Phil.
I have to say I agree with Joe. I don't think data sucks at all. I think the way that we use data completely sucks. And I think a lot of the time we try and solve questions that are far too complex rather than focusing on really simple ideas with data. So as you said, you know, looking at how you can just centralize your data and starting to create what is a universal segment of your data. So rather than pulling in comScore data, your MediaMind data, your TV data and all of that, and you start to look at things that just can't be solved with it. And I think, you know, a lot of people try and find a holy grail with data, and it just doesn't exist right now. And so, yeah, I really do think that data is really good, but it's understanding what you can use the data for and being really simple with data rather than being completely ridiculous and complex with it.
Lars, we'll let you have the next word on this one.
Unfortunately, I agree with these two guys, but I would like to disagree.
That's the last time you're allowed to do that.
I know,
okay.
I know. But actually, I'm interested in actually asking Agnes, what would you do then, or what are you doing now if you can't get all the data together, like we had a reference earlier on? What are you then doing in terms of judging that or looking at that data and taking a call?
What we've done is actually worked on the equal attribution model, but we do look at cross-reference different sets of data from different platforms and really following them through to our data that's coming from a booking system, from a customer database, and trying to make at least a conclusive recommendation back to the management and to the hotel owners. So it's not a perfect solution, but it's what we have at the moment. So, you know, if I have to work for another couple of years with 5 different platforms, well, I guess that's the reality, right?
Yeah. So I'm totally with you on that, and I think probably all of us up here, are, at least on the agency side, we're guilty of putting us in the position we're in right now, in terms of selling digital marketing as being more measurable than many other platforms. I know I've done it. Probably many of you guys out there have done it as well. The focus on click-through rates and whatever 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, and to where we're at today is interesting. But to your point before, in terms of looking at, let's say, an attribution model, what is the right attribution model? And again, coming back to the point made earlier, then it's all just about data and what do you do with it, right? So I'm all for simplifying data.
Use it. Yeah. So I think we're getting a consensus here in the sense that data doesn't really suck. It's how you use it, okay? And you know, obviously there's a long way to go that we can progress how data is consolidated and how it can help us make decisions and various other things. How many people in the audience are actually advertisers and not agencies? How many out there? How many of you are actually advertisers? You're like Agnes, or is Agnes all here on her own? Someone be bold, someone be brave. Caroline, anyone from Australia? Did we bring anyone from down under? An advertiser. Okay, so we've got a lot of agency people here.
So I'm the only advertiser.
You're the only advertiser here, so you get the single view on this one. So then, okay, so you know, obviously we need to progress. We need to move forward. We understand conversion. Convergence. We don't believe data sucks. So then, who are the people? You know, is it down to people like comScore? Is it down to people like Nielsen to help bridge the gap between this world of online and TV and display? Whose responsibility is it? So, Lars, you've got the microphone. Go for it. Who would you pin this one on?
It's a good question. The ones, or the company or whoever that solves the issue will earn a hell of a lot of money, right? So that's and who should do it? And if you guys can do it, if Go can do it, yeah, that would be great. But I don't know who should actually be responsible for it, to be honest. If it's industry-wide issue, then of course maybe somebody like IAB take the lead on that. But yeah.
Joe, want to have a?
I would point to the agencies. Went directly to the agencies. It is, you know, one of the slides earlier, no online, no offline, that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's just passé. The agencies should be taking care of the whole thing, helping their clients understand it, online, offline, and it's all together. And how the attribution modeling across all the various media and everything.
Okay, audience response coming up here.
Go on, James, come on. Go on, James.
I need to shout a bit louder. James Hawkins from Dentsu. I know quite a few of these characters quite well. And I haven't heard such a crock of shit from Joe Nguyen for a long time. He has just heard that there's a big agency contingent in here. But on a serious note, sort of Lars's point, I think it's where we've got to. The fact is that everyone's trying to point at everybody else to solve it. Indeed, the question, should it be the likes of comScore, or should it be the likes of Nielsen, or should it be Agnes representing the advertiser, or should it be the agency? And surely it's a partnership here. No one's doing this completely on their own. The research guys are backing us up with some research to make us brave enough to make decisions. The advertisers themselves should be looking at their data, freeing up the sources of data so people can get in there and analyze it. They should be having analysts within their teams. And the agencies, if they want to exist with any shape or form of a value proposition to the advertisers, should have dedicated people looking at data. And that's how this is going to be solved. Instead of pointing at everybody and saying, IAB should be doing this, or this body should be doing that. Complete crock of shit. It should be the people working in partnership to go, this is a massive part. And Dean stood up last year, and he stood up again and talked about the power of this. Until we work together collaboratively, then we're not going to get anywhere near the holy grail that we're talking about. So carry on, gents.
I agree with James.
You agree. So does anyone on the panel want to respond to that?
Well, I mean...
Crock of shit?
No, I mean...
It has to be a collaborative
as you say,
process,
we support where we can, right? And what it boils down to is where's the money coming from? And it comes from the advertiser through the agencies to the rest of us out there. And if it doesn't flow that way, we have to work against the tide.
So now you're putting everything on me?
Yeah, well, through him. But anyway.
Yeah. I think it's sort of a little bit like that. Phil?
I mean, I agree. It's got to be collaborative. I think agencies have had a little bit of, must take a bit of responsibility for the fact that to sell digital, we did, start saying, oh, let's do clicks, let's measure CPA. And I think that we recognise digital is far beyond that now. And so we do have to work to educate our clients. We have a lot of clients who still, just want clicks. And educate them that people who click on ads aren't necessarily going to convert into their products. And so we also then need to have, work with our research partners to be able to validate that and to start to look at proving that we're actually targeting the right audiences. And finally, I think one of the biggest things that we have is our clients also have to share some of their data with us, especially their conversion data. And a lot of our large clients just won't share their customer data with us. So there's a disconnect between media and our clients.
So I think that, let me take that to Kevin and sort of build on that point. So then, obviously as data becomes more valuable, the argument becomes then who owns the data? And as you start to work with people like Apple and some of the OS guys, they like to believe they own the data. Does the agency own the data? Does the advertiser own the data? Who actually owns the data? Perspective on that, Kevin?
Yeah, look, there's a lot of people who own data. I think at the end of the day, it's the client who owns their data. And it has to be the client that owns their data. The ones who are trying to measure the effectiveness of their media, their communications, their sales promotions, etc., towards driving an end sale. And there are lots of inputs to that. And Joe from comScore, they have data that inputs into it. The media agency, we have data that inputs into it. But in truth, who's paying us at the end of the day? And really, whenever I wonder who's the boss in these things, I ask who's paying the money at the end of the day. And if the clients are paying, it's their data.
Agree with that, Agnes?
To a certain extent, but I still believe that it has to be a collaborative...
I'm not saying it's not.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm just saying it's your data.
Yeah. And what we did with them, and he has a point. We have to be comfortable and trusting enough with the agency to release some of our data to them so that they can help us to make sense of overall communication impact. And it's not just being collaborative, but I would say to a certain extent being has to be a partnership based on trust as well. If I don't trust my agency with my data, then they can't help me with making sense out of it.
Joe, any other perspective on that?
Whoever pays for the data owns the data, and it's not clear cut. It's not the client side. We've got trading desks, we've got DMPs out there that are selling data. We've got publishers setting up their own DMPs. They own the data. Choose to sell that data, but data is a live thing. And so there's cookies, and those expire. There's new cookies. That's a new set of data out there. So yes, so someone could run a campaign, and they buy that data, and they keep those cookies, and that's their stuff as it goes forward. But then the original cookies still belong to that publisher or that DMP or whatever it is. So there's tons of stuff out there, and I don't think it's a straight who owns the data. It's like who pays for it, whoever collects it, whoever has it.
I throw you another curveball. those clients of ours who saw the ads and come to our website, they will view us as the rightful owner of the data, and they expect us to keep their privacy, regardless of whether they came to our site and booked because of a communication they saw in some other site. They will see us as the ultimate owner of the data.
Wait, you're talking credit card data, right? You're talking customer data, right? If you release that, yeah, you should not release that. But if you put a cookie because you're buying data from somewhere else, you're buying that traffic from somewhere else, and they come and that cookie leaves, and it's tied into another data set that's a different profile from that same user. You didn't provide that credit card data or whatever it is, but that person still has a different set of data collected by someone else, owned by somebody else, and not you.
So let me go. I think we've got a question here in the audience, or a point of view. Okay. So the point, your point of view is that, and I think what we'll do is we'll come to that point a little bit later. I think the whole privacy thing is it's probably not so emotional here in Asia as it is in Europe. Especially where they're trying to legislate against it. So I don't know, Joe. You work from across the world.
Yeah, no, it's not a big deal here. We don't have privacy, groups fighting us for privacy. As a consumer, I control my data, and I think consumers will have to start to learn how to control their data and how to, there was an article about how passwords are useless now. Anyone can have any passwords. Consumers have got to learn. It's a new world for them too.
So one, you're an industry guy, Joe, and another thing, you're a consumer. Okay. So what is acceptable use of your own data as a consumer?
I don't mind getting porn ads, but not on print. I got kids. I consume. If it is relevant to me, that's great.
Okay.
I mean,
I
buy a lot of things. I eat a lot of places, and if the advertising is great, I love good deals, and Asians love good deals.
Okay. So relevant to you.
I can attest to that.
I've heard that a lot, Kevin. As you got the porno question, maybe I should ask you.
No, I think consumers aren't as caught up with privacy as we would like to think so. I think we've made a huge mountain out of that for a lot of the wrong reasons. As soon as it becomes irrelevant, then I think it's an invasion of privacy, to be honest with you. I ever say to clients whenever this question comes up is delete your cookies and see what your experience of the internet is like for a day. Because it's crap. You have to fill in your address again. You have to type in passwords, all that stuff that you just don't want to have to do. So again, I think, the legislation in Europe seems to have gone off on a crazy tangent. And that's not necessarily healthy, but it's our own fault because we've added to that conversation instead of just closing it down. If we self-regulated maybe a little bit better than we have been in the past, it wouldn't be a problem. But I think it's also really, really good headlines when Facebook get up about privacy because it sells more impressions, it sells more column inches. I don't think it's as much of an issue as people think it is.
Well, I think in Europe it gives European legislation, if I could say it, something to do. So I think, they like to legislate and that's what they have to do. How about you, Phil? What's your limit on your own privacy?
It's a tough question. Especially coming from using a lot of data with DMPs and things like that. I think, especially if it's non-PII, I don't really have an issue with it. So if it is just your surfing habits and your behaviours online, and it serves you up relevant advertising, or what advertisers perceive is relevant to you as advertising, I think that's a good consumer experience. I think, there's a lot of stories about, especially credit card companies in the States using a lot of data and on-selling their data as a new revenue stream. And, that starts to move into a shady area, I believe, is when you're using companies who you have explicitly put a huge amount of trust in and put a lot of information towards, and they start advertising that and on-selling that to third parties. I think that is where the line starts to be crossed.
Right. Lars, when does it move from targeting to stalking for you personally?
To be honest, I haven't experienced good targeting. I think maybe from one hotel, but again, even being in the industry.
Do you want to name them?
being in the industry, I actually also noticed that I get right. And if I don't feel that I get proper ads served to me, that is relevant and all that, then for me, yeah, it doesn't really matter, right? I don't see the ads. So for me, I'm unfortunately, again, you said I couldn't do that, but I totally agree. As long as it's relevant for me,
right,
then I'm fine with the ads, the cookies and the data being used. Just one quick note, just on the whole cookie debate in Europe. I saw an article, I'm from Denmark originally, I saw an article yesterday. Now they're actually going to suggest that sound in banners are going to be illegal. So actually it's going to go in a law. Sound in a banner cannot be done.
So let's go to the audience. Hopefully the mic works this time.
Hi, Nico from Access. I find this conversation happening over and over again across the spectrum of, especially for the media side of things. We worry so much about data when we completely ignore the fact that, for instance, a telco alone retains more data than you can possibly pack together. And we ignore that completely. So if that is really the concern, why would we stop using that to begin with? I think that the conversation needs to be moving away from a concern from a sense of privacy invasion when we think about internet as a perspective of a big brother watching on us, whilst in reality the whole conversation needs to be moved away to a big sister concept. We are very happy to actually have things that are talking to us these days. We saw all the things that we want to talk to us. For some strange reason, we fear data when in reality the telco themselves know more about us than anybody else does. So I think I want to bring the conversation back to, I think, something that is really critical, that is what we do with it. Because the fear is something that we stimulate ourselves in the conversation, in the press out there. We stimulate the conversation around it in the wrong manner. Let's do something with it. I mean, I think the critical point is utilization of data. There's a ton of stuff out there, guys, that is simply designed to filter out tons of data sources and makes it accessible to particularly marketer from that perspective. Meaningful ways of utilizing different data sources that actually can be made completely compatible to tell a single story. We made a business out of it. There's tons of companies that are making a huge amount of money behind it. So I don't necessarily understand what is the real fulcrum of this conversation when in reality, the things are all out there. If fear is a factor, well, let's be afraid of what it really needs to be afraid. And if we're not afraid, to consider what we can do with that sort of data. And more importantly, let's change our mindset around it.
Does anyone from the panel want to respond to that perspective, that point of view? Thinking hard. We're a hard-thinking team. So, you know, I've got a couple of other questions. I've got one for Dean, actually. I saw him wandering away there, so that's just frightened the hell out of him. Dean's a pretty creative guy. So Dean, you know, we have this sort of conversation that, you know, advertising and marketing is all about that emotional connection. And, you know, does data get in the way of that? So when does, you know, data really sort of stifle creativity? And I know you have quite a strong perspective on this.
True. I think most creative can't actually be measured at all. I think I can drive a car at 100 kilometers down the road and see a road sign that says, you know, Phuket one way, Bangkok the other, and I will turn my car and do that, and you've got to try and measure that. Now, I've just changed my behavior in a very fast instant second from one way to another, purely in a visual alone. So unless you've got things like sensors linked to my car that are able, or cameras that are able to do that, which, okay, technology may get there, but we're a long way from that. And so the reality of the consumer experience, or just human experience, is you're all collecting the wrong data. You know, we're looking at the wrong thing, and we have been. And we sat as an industry, and we're sitting there going, we click, therefore let's make ads that click. Therefore, let's look at every feature and format and whatever else to get better clicks. rather than actually going back to the other way, which is TV just says, well, it works because it sells stuff. And I think that's the challenge that we have to sort of look at in terms of the thing. So the question to me is, with this whole thing about data is, are we even anywhere near collecting the right kind of data anyway to make those kind of big decisions?
I think I agree with you.
You're the first person ever to agree with Dean.
No, but again, I think we're getting caught up in single channels. Did we turn left or right when we saw a visual? I think what you did when you got there is a little bit more important. And for the 10 people who turned left, there'll be 10 people who turned right. And so what did they do? So, I think that the whole area of media mix modeling is a much more interesting and evolved area now than it was before. And to be able to see how people have been impacted by different media to an end outcome, and how that mix can actually be subtly changed, and that's a really interesting thing. Whether you turn left or right at that one poster site.
So therefore, let me throw the question to you then. What is that end point? Because for the majority of brands, that's not going to be on their website. If I'm going to buy shampoo, I'm going to buy it at a drugstore or whatever else, either offline, or if it is online, I'm an online drugstore. But we're not tracking the product purchase and attributing back to the advertising. We're tracking, did they go to a website that actually I have no interest in going to?
When Ernest was presenting his case study on Coca-Cola at the Super Bowl, part of my old media guy wanting to ask him, did it work? Because nobody actually asked that question. But one thing that he did show, which I thought was really interesting, he showed Coca-Cola's stock price. So at the end of the day, to Coca-Cola shareholders, what did they care about? Is my stock price bigger than it was when I bought my shares? So the true metric for them is not even sales, not purchase intent, not brand awareness, not consideration, stock price. Now that's a really interesting angle to take. If every communication and every media plan and strategy, social media, whatever we did was linked to the stock price, then I think a lot of clients would be very happy.
Joe?
When we move to digital, naturally everyone wants to get down to the minute point of percentage points, and up till then, advertising's been run by statistics. You do a survey, you do this, you do that, you get an indication of what is right. Now everyone's expecting everything to be 100% correct. That is not the way it works. There's no way to have a single source panel like what you're talking about to track everything that person does. And even then, it's a projection. You can't be like Minority Report and track everybody doing everything. It's still going to be statistics. And a lot of the new data companies, a lot of the new digital sides are just trying to be very exact. And that's the mistake. It's statistics, it's percentages, it's likelihood.
Can I add on to that? Yeah, data tells you a story, but I'll go back to what you said about emotional connection. I may have a fantastic campaign and it really drive massively bookings and put a lot of people in my beds. But when they reach the hotel and they don't have a fantastic experience, it's going to defeat all the purpose of our communication because with just one single tweet, post, review on TripAdvisor, they could destroy whatever communication investments I put into that campaign just because the emotional connection and the emotional experience, that moment of truth, doesn't live up to expectations. So we forget that we're dealing with humans and clients here who do not always behave according to what the data tells us.
So we've probably got about 5 minutes left here before we move on. Questions from the audience. Be brave, be bold. Arms goes up at the back there. We like that.
Hi there. I'm City from Group M. I think
can you speak up? Can you just speak up a little? It's a little bit hard to hear here. I don't know if the rest of the panel.
Yeah, sorry, I've got a bit of a cold. I'm City from Group M. I think you guys have made a massive assumption here that everyone in this room thinks that data is valuable. I know most of us come from a digital background, but how many of us are guilty of using spreadsheets to capture data that can't go anywhere? I'm from an IT background, and that's my biggest challenge, trying to get people to move away from spreadsheets And assuming we're all digital people here, that should be a fairly easy job, but it's not. And getting that data into a system so we can utilize it. And I'm not talking about ad serving data, I'm talking about booking data in particular, cost data, performance data, being able to evaluate the performance of your campaign against what you've booked. People need to change their behavior, and it's a big challenge. So it's one thing saying, oh, data this, data that, and it's brilliant, but do we all really agree with that?
Let's see. It's a little bit hard to hear up here, so let's Joe, maybe.
There's a lot of crappy data out there. That's true. Most of the data is crappy. But if you're working for Group M and you don't like spreadsheets, your career is severely limited. Just to say it. But yeah, there's a lot of crappy data, and you need to understand, okay, what is the performance? Is it a sale? And how do you measure a sale off of a campaign when it's Coca-Cola? Right? It's not that easy. No, it's not. And to try to get all this click-through rates to again understand that people get on coupons for Coke and then eventually go and redeem it, I don't know if that's going to work.
Phil?
So yeah, there's a lot of data. There's also a lot of people. And again, coming back to the point earlier, it's also what we do with that data. And if we put it in a spreadsheet, yes, that's one way of doing it. We can also do it in another way. Building a system could be one. It could also be using our judgment in terms of just looking at it from whatever output. So again, it also depends on the approach you take to the data, I would say. So again, I'm all for the simplicity of looking at data, and especially on, let's just take something as specific as a campaign report, right? Again, seen so many examples of pages with all kinds of metrics in there that doesn't really give any kind of idea of how the campaign performed. And you can tell so many different stories. Is it click-through rate? Is it the unique impressions? Is it above the fold impressions? Is it whatever, right? So, yeah.
Any other questions from the audience? Go on. Again, be brave, be bold.
So we talk a lot about data sucks. So question, from your own experience, whether is it as an agency or as a client, give me a scenario where data really sucks in a particular case that you're working on, or data rocks in a particular case that you're working on.
I don't work for this company anymore. So when I was at Millennium Copthorne Hotels, I was running e-commerce. So I was reporting into sales and marketing. So our marketing team did a huge campaign, $2 million campaign with Turner, the whole group, Fortune magazine, CNN, $2 million worth of stuff. And they built a microsite and everything. And then after the campaign ran and all this stuff, and I was running e-commerce. I was on the e-commerce side. And the SVP came up to me and says, how much money do we make? I'm like, from what? From the microsite that we pushed all this traffic to. And we had games on and all that stuff. And I was like, you don't want to know. He's like, really? Come on, how much money did we make from that site? I was like, you don't want to know. I'm like, come on. I was like, okay, you made $400. It's a branding campaign. It has nothing to do with driving a person to going and booking now, today, within 30 days of that campaign running on air, right? And booking directly coming from the microsite. That just doesn't work. It's a branding campaign, and it should be measured completely different. He came to me asking for dollar amounts from this branding campaign, and that just doesn't work.
So I think we're running out of time here. So no more questions? Last word in the audience? None? One. We'll take this, and then I'm going to give each of you your own last word around this particular subject, and ask you to sort of predict what 6 months looks like. But let's go to our...
Joe McKenzie, OMD.
Jeremy.
It's been an interesting discussion. Not sure we've got anywhere. And I guess I just want to make the point that data isn't new. I think governments and organizations have been run on data for centuries. I think the question is more about, does more data suck? And I think more data does suck, because it means that we have to get better at filtering out the crap. The way that we do that is we have clients who are more organized with the way that they collect and manage their data. We have agencies that hire statisticians and analysts that can use the data to provide insight. And we have companies like comScore, and we have websites generating data all the time. So I think we've got to be realistic about this. More data isn't necessarily a good thing. We just need to get better at managing the data.
So I think actually that's a better summary than I could actually have done myself. So I think, Jeremy, great summary. Thank you for that. That's really helpful. So look, last word for each of you. You know, your prediction. 6 months, it gets better, a year. What happens? Are we still here next year talking about the same thing? Kevin, let's go down the line. And Joe, you can have the last word.
Look, I hope I think a couple of people have touched on it. We can dance around the whole data issue and too much data or not enough data, or what data are we looking at? I think that there's a real opportunity for media agencies to reinvent the way we get paid by leveraging data a little bit better. Because if we're still getting a percentage of media commission or a retainer, we're really underselling what we're doing here. And if we can manage data to prove to clients, you know what, that great strategy we put together just shifted so many more units for you and increased your market share by X amount, then we can actually put our hands up and look for more cash. So I think it'd be really, really interesting if we start using data to help us get paid a little bit better by our clients.
Agnes.
6 months down the road, I think we'll still be grappling with that issue because so long as clients, advertisers like us, do not know how to use data correctly to interpret the results, it will, that debate will go on forever. And it's also what Joe said about the usage of data. I don't think it's possible to have one single platform that pulls everything together. It's really up to the client ourselves to really look at internally what we can do to pull all the data from the different sources and to form a 360-degree view of our client. So it's at the end of the day, it's really up to you as the end user how you want to push this issue forward. For us, we trust our CRM data because it's pulled from 5 different sources. So I think that's the only way to go forward until there's one single platform that can do that.
Phil?
I don't think this issue is going to go away anytime soon. I think the critical thing is to start to measure what matters and understand what the role of each channel on the media plan is. So what is the role of TV? What is the role of digital? And within each of those channels, actually measure what is important for that channel and what its role is in the media plan. And then I think at least we'll be able to understand the channel influence and impact that each one has.
Lars?
I think we'll be here next year discussing the same. I hope that probably 5 years as well, yeah. But I hope that, of course, with the industry working together, we will be able to get closer to some kind of solution. But I don't think it's kind of a thing that just goes away overnight.
So, Joe, I think very appropriate, coming from comScore, that you get the last word on this one.
Yeah, I mean, my perspective, is okay. You have a campaign or the creative, but ultimately, what the stock chart is, you want to see sales, and you sort of this is the campaign and this is sales. That's the ultimate ROI with any client that you have. It's sales. How do you work backwards to fill up that stuff? What data can be used to actually make that probability of that sale better? That's how the approach should be. How long are we going to do this? We're going to do this forever. And for us right now, it's education. There's education of the younger people that are coming up. You're doing a lot of stuff with education. We have to educate them early days. What they're learning in college right now just really doesn't help them to understand this industry. They're not really learning what advertising is about. Most of the digital advertising right now is not really learning about branding and marketing and stuff like that. They're learning how to program and code, and that's not going to help. So there's education that has to happen, and it's generational. It's not going to happen soon.
So, look, I'd certainly like to thank our panel, Kevin, Agnes, Phil, Lars, Joe. Put your hands together for our panel. I think, as it says on the board here, our time is up and we're 40 seconds over. But I think we'll take this one to the bar after the session finishes and, you know, share your opinions and hunt down the panel and let's keep the conversation going. But, you know, once again, thank you very much for coming here and supporting us in this conversation. Thank you.